In 1616, a pope and a cardinal inquisitor reprimanded Galileo, warning him to curtail his forays into the supernal realms. The motions of the heavenly bodies, they said, having been touched upon in the Psalms, the book of Joshua, and elsewhere in the Bible, were matters best left to the holy fathers of the Church. Galileo obeyed their orders, silencing himself on the subject. For 7 cautious years he turned his efforts to less perilous pursuits, such as harnessing Jovian satellites in the service of navigation to help sailors discover their longitude at sea. Shortly after his sister's death in May of 1623, however, Galileo found reason to return to the sun-centered universe. That summer, a new pope ascended the throne of St. Peter in Rome. The Supreme Pontiff, Urban VIII, brought to the Holy See an intellectualism and an interest in scientific investigation not shared by his immediate predecessors. Galileo knew the man personally, had demonstrated his telescope to him, and sided with him one night in a debate about floating bodies after a banquet at the Florentine court. Urban, for his part, had admired Galileo so long and well that he had even written a poem for him, mentioning the sights revealed by Galileo's glass. The presence of the poet-pope encouraged Galileo to proceed with a long-planned popular dissertation on the 2 rival theories of cosmology, the sun-centered and the earth-centered, or in his words, the 2 chief systems of the world. It might have been difficult for Suor Maria Celeste to reconcile her role as a bride of Christ with her father's position as potentially the greatest enemy of the Catholic Church since Martin Luther. Instead, she approved of his endeavors, because she knew the depth of his faith. She accepted Galileo's conviction that God had dictated the Holy Scriptures to guide men's spirits, but proffered the unraveling of the universe as a challenge to their intelligence. Understanding her father's prodigious capacity in this pursuit, she prayed for his health, for his longevity, for the fulfillment of his every just desire. As the convent's apothecary, she concocted elixirs and pills to strengthen him for his studies and protect him from epidemic diseases. Her letters, animated by her belief in Galileo's innocence of any heretical depravity, carried him through the ordeal of his ultimate confrontation with Urban and the Inquisition in 1633. No detectable strife ever disturbed the affectionate relationship between Galileo and his daughter. Theirs is not a tale of abuse or rejection or intentional stifling of abilities. Rather, it is a love story, a tragedy, and a mystery. Most of Suor Maria Celeste's letters traveled in the pocket of a messenger, or in a basket laden with laundry, sweetmeats, or herbal medicines, across the short distance from the convent of San Matteo on a hillside just south of Florence to Galileo in the city or at his suburban home. Following the angry papal summons to Rome in 1632, however, the letters rode on horseback some 200 miles and were frequently delayed by quarantines imposed as the Black Plague spread death and dread across Italy. Gaps of months' duration disrupt the continuity of reportage in places, but every page is redolent of daily life, down to the pain of toothache and the smell of vinegar. Galileo held on to his daughter's missives indiscriminately, collecting her requests for fruits or sewing supplies alongside her outbursts on ecclesiastical politics. Similarly, Suor Maria Celeste saved all of Galileo's letters, as rereading them she often reminded him gave her great pleasure. By the time she received the last rites, the letters she had gathered over her lifetime in the convent constituted the bulk of her earthly possessions. But then the Mother Abbess, who would have discovered Galileo's letters while emptying Suor Maria Celeste's cell, apparently buried or burned them out of fear. After the celebrated trial at Rome, a convent dared not harbor the writings of a vehemently suspected heretic. In this fashion, the correspondence between father and daughter was reduced to a monologue. Standing in now for all the thoughts he once expressed to her are only those he chanced to offer others about her. A woman of exquisite mind, Galileo described her to a colleague in another country, singular goodness, and most tenderly attached to me. On first learning of Suor Maria Celeste's letters, people generally assume that Galileo's replies must lie concealed somewhere in the recesses of the Vatican Library. and that if only an enterprising outsider could gain access, the missing half of the dialogue would be found.